The city was wrapped in darkness that night, a cold December wind slicing through every street and alley. It was the kind of night when even the streetlights looked tired, their yellow glow flickering through a fog that hung heavy in the air. Ryan Carter walked with his hands buried deep in his thin jacket pockets, his breath turning to mist as he exhaled. He was 26, quiet, hardworking, and invisible to most of the world. His shoes were old, his dreams modest, and his pockets carried little more than a few coins and a bus pass. He had just finished a double shift at a small cafe downtown, where he earned just enough to pay rent for his tiny one-room apartment. Still, despite the exhaustion in his body and the aches in his feet, his spirit carried something most people had long forgotten: kindness. The bus stop was almost deserted. Snowflakes fell lazily, melting as they touched the pavement. Ryan sat on the bench, rubbing his hands together for warmth. The last bus of the night was running late. The air was bitterly cold, and he could feel it creeping under his clothes. Just a few feet away sat an older woman. She looked frail, wrapped in a thin scarf that barely covered her head. Her hands trembled as she tried to sip from a small paper cup, but it was empty. The way she sat, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, told Ryan she'd been there for a long time. For a moment, he hesitated. Everyone around him that night was too busy trying to escape the cold to notice anyone else. But something inside him wouldn't let him stay silent. He looked at her again. She was shivering. Her lips were turning a pale shade of blue. He stood up slowly and walked over. "Mom," he said gently, "are you okay?" The woman looked up, startled, as if no one had spoken to her in days. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm fine, dear. Just waiting for the bus." Ryan smiled faintly. "It's freezing out here. You sure you don't want to wait inside somewhere?" She shook her head. "I'll be fine," she said again, her voice trembling from the cold more than from confidence. Ryan sighed. His own jacket wasn't much. Old, faded, and barely warm. But it was all he had. And yet, as he watched her shiver, something inside him told him there was only one right thing to do. Without another word, he slipped the jacket off his shoulders and placed it gently around hers. Her eyes widened. "Oh no, I can't take that," she said softly. "Please," he insisted, smiling. "You need it more than I do." The woman looked down, her lips quivering. Tears filled her eyes. "You'll freeze," she said. "I'll be fine," Ryan replied. "The bus should be here any minute." She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude she couldn't express. It was such a simple gesture, yet it meant the world to her. The bus arrived moments later, and as she stepped inside, she turned to look at him one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan nodded and waved as the bus pulled away, unaware that this single act of kindness was about to change his entire life. He walked home that night with the cold biting into his skin. The wind stung his face, but for some reason, his heart felt warm. When he finally reached his apartment, his fingers were numb, his body shaking. He turned on the small electric heater, which barely worked anymore, and wrapped himself in a thin blanket. As he closed his eyes, he smiled faintly, thinking about the old woman. Maybe, he thought, kindness still mattered in this world. The next morning, the alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m. Ryan groaned and sat up. His breath was visible in the freezing air. The heater had stopped working during the night. He rubbed his hands together and laughed quietly at his situation. "Another day, another dollar," he muttered. He made himself a cup of instant coffee and a piece of toast, then got ready for work. At the cafe, things were as usual. The manager was in a bad mood, customers were impatient, and Ryan worked quietly through it all. Despite everything, he always found a reason to smile. Helping an old man carry his tray, giving a free coffee to a homeless customer when no one was looking, or holding the door for strangers. Days passed. The old woman he'd helped that night never returned, and Ryan soon forgot about the encounter. Life went on, simple, predictable, and unchanging. But deep in the background, something was shifting. A week later, on another cold evening, Ryan was cleaning tables near closing time when the cafe door opened. The little bell above the door chimed softly. A woman walked in, tall, elegant, wearing a long white coat and leather gloves. Her presence immediately drew attention. She didn't look like the kind of person who visited small corner cafes. Her perfume carried a faint trace of lilies, her voice calm and poised. She looked around until her eyes found Ryan. For a moment, she just watched him. Then she walked forward and smiled. "Excuse me," she said, "are you Ryan Carter?" Ryan blinked in surprise. Yes. That's me. You work here, right?" Yes, ma'am. She nodded, her eyes softening. Do you remember me? Ryan looked at her carefully. Her hair was styled, her skin glowing, her outfit expensive. I'm sorry, he said. Have we met before? The woman smiled gently. You offered me your jacket last week. At the bus stop. Ryan's eyes widened. Wait, that was you. She nodded. That was me. For a moment, Ryan was speechless. She looked completely different now, confident, radiant, full of life. The transformation was almost unbelievable. I wanted to thank you, she said. That night, I was stranded. My car had broken down nearby, and I had been waiting for help for hours. I didn't want to bother anyone. Then you came along. Ryan smiled awkwardly. I just didn't want you to get sick. You did more than that, she replied softly. You reminded me that kindness still exists. They stood in silence for a moment before she said, May I sit down? Ryan nodded and wiped the table clean for her. She sat gracefully and ordered a coffee. For the next few minutes they talked, not as strangers, but as two people who had somehow crossed paths for a reason. She asked about his life, his job, his dreams. Ryan answered honestly, not realizing that every word was being carefully noted in her mind. When she finally stood up to leave, she smiled. You're a good man, Ryan Carter. Don't ever let the world change that. He nodded, still not understanding why her words felt so heavy, so meaningful. After she left, Ryan stood there for a long time, watching the snow fall outside the window. Something about her visit didn't feel ordinary. There was a mystery in her eyes, something unsaid, something that hinted this was not the last time they'd meet. That night, as he walked home, the wind howled through the streets. Ryan pulled his scarf tighter around his neck, unaware that behind him, a sleek black car had stopped near the café. Inside, the same woman sat quietly, speaking into her phone. Yes, she said softly. That's him, Ryan Carter. There was a pause, then she added, I want his full profile by tomorrow morning. The car drove off into the snowy night, its red taillights fading into the fog. Ryan, still walking home, had no idea that his simple act of kindness had caught the attention of a woman far more powerful than he could imagine. He didn't know that she wasn't just a grateful stranger. She was Amelia Warren, one of the city's most influential millionaires, a woman whose decisions changed lives every day. And now, she had decided that Ryan Carter's life was about to change forever. But Ryan didn't know any of this yet. That night, he went to bed in his cold little apartment, thinking only about how strange life could be. Somewhere, in another part of the city, Amelia sat by her fireplace, holding his old jacket. The same one he'd given her that night. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, kindness still exists and I intend to return it. Outside, the snow kept falling. The city slept, unaware that fate had begun weaving a story. One that started with a single act of kindness, and would soon unfold into something far greater than Ryan could ever imagine. The next morning, Ryan woke up to the sound of his alarm buzzing endlessly. He groaned and reached for it, slamming the button to silence the noise. His small apartment was still cold, the heater barely alive. The same routine awaited him. Coffee, toast, and another long day at the café. He didn't know that at that very moment, his name was being typed into a file at one of the most powerful offices in the city. Amelia Warren sat behind her polished desk, her assistant standing nearby with a tablet in hand. The file on the screen contained everything there was to know about Ryan Carter. His work record, his background, his college degree that he had never been able to use because life had been too harsh. Graduated in business management but has been working at a café for 3 years. The assistant said quietly, clean record, honest references. He takes care of his neighbors and volunteers at a local shelter sometimes. Amelia leaned back in her chair, looking at his photo. A simple ID picture, slightly faded, but his eyes were kind. I gave away his only jacket on a freezing night. She said softly, that tells me more than any RA ever could. She looked out the large glass window of her office, where the city skyline shimmered in the winter sun. Prepare an offer, she said finally. But don't tell him who it's from. Not yet. That evening, as Ryan finished wiping the counter at the café, the doorbell chimed again. A man in a black coat entered, holding an envelope. He looked official, serious. Ryan Carter, he asked. Ryan nodded, slightly nervous. Yes, that's me. I have something for you, the man said, handing him the envelope. Congratulations. Before Ryan could ask what it was, the man turned and left. Ryan looked at the envelope curiously. Inside was a neatly folded letter with an emblem at the top, a golden W engraved in the corner. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for an interview for a management position at Warren Enterprises. Your profile impressed us greatly, and we believe you have the qualities our company values most. Please report to our headquarters this Friday at 10:00 a.m. Ryan's heart stopped for a moment. Warren Enterprises. The company he had dreamed of working for years ago but never got a reply from. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "There's no way this is real," he murmured. But it was. Friday came faster than he expected. Ryan wore his best clothes, a clean shirt, an old but neatly pressed pair of pants, and a borrowed tie from his neighbor. As he stood in front of the massive glass building of Warren Enterprises, his reflection looked smaller than ever. Inside, the receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. "Mr. Carter. This way, please." He was led into a meeting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the heating system. Ryan sat nervously, his palms sweaty. After a few minutes, the door opened. Amelia Warren walked in. Ryan stood up immediately, stunned. "You," he whispered. Amelia smiled warmly. "Me." He blinked, completely speechless. You're the CEO." "Yes," she said, her tone gentle. "And you're the man who gave away his only jacket to a stranger." Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I wanted to tell you that night," she continued, "but something told me not to. I wanted to see who you really were, beyond that one act of kindness. So I did my research, and now I know." Ryan shook his head slowly. "I don't understand. Why me? I'm just an ordinary guy." Amelia smiled. "Because sometimes the world doesn't need extraordinary people. It needs good people. And you, Ryan, are one of them." She handed him another envelope. Inside was a contract, an official offer for a management position, with a salary that nearly made him drop the paper. "Mom, this is too much," he stammered. "I don't deserve this." "On the contrary," she replied, "you deserve more than this. You didn't give me your jacket because you wanted something in return. You did it because it was right. That's the kind of person I want leading my company's new charity division." Ryan felt tears burning his eyes. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't know how to ever repay you." Amelia shook her head. "You already did. You reminded me what kindness looks like. I had forgotten." From that day forward, Ryan's life changed completely. He began working at Warren Enterprises, learning quickly and gaining the respect of everyone around him. His humility, his patience, and his sincerity stood out in a world full of ambition and greed. Months passed. Ryan grew into his role, leading projects that helped hundreds of underprivileged families. Every time he made a decision, he thought of that freezing night and how a simple act of kindness had led him here. But success never changed him. He still rode the bus to work sometimes, just to remind himself where he came from. He still greeted the janitors by name, helped interns when they struggled, and donated part of his salary to the local shelter. One evening, he received a call from Amelia's assistant, asking him to attend a special company dinner. It was an exclusive event, investors, partners, and top executives only. Ryan hesitated at first, unsure if he belonged there, but Amelia insisted. That night, the grand hall of the city hotel sparkled with chandeliers and soft music. Ryan arrived in a simple suit, nervous but composed. When he entered the room, conversations paused for a moment. People whispered, some recognized him, others wondered who he was. Amelia approached him with a proud smile. "Ryan, I want you to meet someone," she said, guiding him toward the stage. "Everyone, this is Ryan Carter, the man who reminded me that humanity still exists." The crowd turned to look at him. Ryan felt a lump in his throat. Amelia continued, "A few months ago I met Ryan by chance on a cold night. I was alone, stranded and freezing. He gave me his only jacket. That one act changed my perspective. And today I want to honor him for what he represents." Applause filled the room. Ryan tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "I don't know what to say," he began softly. "I never thought a small thing like giving someone a jacket could matter this much." He paused, taking a deep breath. "That night, I didn't have much. I was cold, tired, and broke. But I had a choice, to ignore someone in need or to help. I chose to help, and somehow that decision changed everything. It's proof that even when you think no one sees your goodness, the universe always does." The audience stood and clapped. Amelia smiled, her eyes glistening. A year later, Ryan founded the Carter Foundation for Kindness, supported by Warren Enterprises. Its mission was simple: to help people in small but meaningful ways. From providing coats to the homeless in winter to offering job training for those in need, the foundation became a beacon of hope for many. Ryan often visited shelters personally, handing out warm clothes. He would tell his story, not to boast, but to remind others that no good deed is ever wasted. On one quiet evening, he returned to the same bus stop where it all began. Snow was falling again, the air cold and still. He stood there for a moment, looking at the empty bench, his heart full. The memory of that night played in his mind. The old woman shivering, his jacket around her shoulders, and her faint whisper of, "Thank you." He smiled and whispered into the night, "Thank you too." At that very moment, a young man approached the stop, clearly cold and without a coat. Ryan walked up to him, took off his scarf, and handed it over with a warm smile. The young man looked surprised. "Sir, are you sure?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, you need it more than I do." As the boy thanked him and walked away, Ryan looked up at the sky. Snowflakes danced around him like little blessings. He realized that life had come full circle. Kindness had brought him here, and kindness would always be his way forward. The city lights glowed in the distance as he turned and walked away, the snow crunching beneath his feet. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that his journey, the journey that began on one cold night, had only just begun. And as the screen fades to black, a single line appears: always choose kindness. In a world that often feels cold and self-centered, Ryan Carter's story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can set off a chain reaction that changes everything. He didn't give his jacket to gain recognition or reward. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And that pure, selfless decision caught the eye of someone who had the power to transform his life forever. What started as a simple gesture between two strangers on a freezing night became a life-altering journey that redefined both of their paths. Amelia Warren, a woman who once believed that success was measured by power and money, rediscovered her faith in humanity through one humble man's compassion. And Ryan, the man who had nothing but heart, proved that true wealth lies not in what we own, but in what we give. This story isn't just about luck or coincidence. It's about how kindness echoes. You never know who's watching, who's being moved, or what doors may open because you chose to do good when it was easier to walk away. As the city sleeps and the snow falls quietly on that same bus stop, Ryan's legacy continues, not through fame or fortune, but through every heart he touched and every soul inspired by his example. Because sometimes, it only takes one simple act of kindness to change the world.